Welcome to the August 13th, 2025 meeting of the Southampton Town Conservation Board. I invite everyone to rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry. I'll slide over a little bit.
What is your pleasure on the minutes of July 23rd, 2025?
Motion to accept?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Opposed?
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Public hearings, A 02403837 East Shore Drive LLC. Getting new anything tonight, Daphne?
Oops, sorry.
Good evening. Daphne Vaughn, Surfside Environmental Planning for 37 East Shore Drive LLC. So we last met on this project back on May 14th to begin the discussion on our application that was filed on June 10th of 2024. We had requested an adjournment for the June 11th hearing date on June 10th. And this morning at 10:09 a.m., I was provided a sketch by Mr. Shea of an alternative plan dated June 10th. This was not previously provided to me, so it was given to me this morning, but was done 2 months ago, effectively. So as far as a response to that, that doesn't really give me a lot of opportunity to digest it and actually respond to it. But at first glance, I don't believe that the plan really makes much sense. It insinuates that the existing lawn is higher than the beach by a significant amount. The beach is at elevation 3 with the grade in the existing lawn between 5.5 and 6.5 feet above sea level. But I'm going to go back to that in a few minutes. So at the last meeting, we discussed the elevations of the 5 other properties to the north where similar shoreline protection structures were approved by this board between 2018 and 2021. In reviewing the surveys for those projects that were available in the town GIS, there's no significant difference in elevation between 37 East Shore Drive and the 5 others to the north, those properties being 43, 47, 51, 57, and 59 East Shore Drive. So all of the lowest elevations for the 5 other structures begin at around elevation 3, 4 in one circumstance, I believe, and go to a maximum height of elevation 8. So our property, the existing elevation is around 6.5 feet. So it's comparable. So recently, I was contacted by the owner of 63 East Shore Drive, who is the first property beyond the narrow association walkway that has a bulkhead. So from her property beyond to the north are all bulkheaded. She had contacted me because she wanted to ask me a question about a potential project on her property and reminded me that I met her at her property in 2019. So the photos that I just passed out to you are actually, the first page are photos that I took in 2019 of the situation at 59 and 57 East Shore before any approval was done by this board or an application was even filed. So you can see the debris in the first photo from the association walkway that had been not totally destroyed, but incurred a lot of damage. But you can see the slope of the property. So when I found these, I thought to myself, so the slope is not as drastic as was portrayed at the last meeting and was thought about at the last meeting. It's
Jackie,
a
can I
little
interrupt a
higher.
minute?
Yes?
Why are we talking about these other properties when the issue is 37?
This is relevant to what was stated at the last meeting. So I'm just giving you, we talked about elevations. So I'm showing you proof that the elevation of that property was not a very steep slope. It is slightly higher than my lot. However, it was portrayed at the last meeting that those properties had significant erosion and it was much closer to their structures. But if you look at this, it's really not the case. Those properties, those first two properties, to the south of the association walkway, the narrow one closest to 63, 59 and 57 East Shore, were both given approvals for similar structures with no public hearing and were not required in one case to do any sand over the actual revetment, that it was just allowed to be maintained as rock. So that's why I'm discussing this. So anyway, I wanted to show you those photos. I returned to the beach on July 19th, and I took a bunch of photos. So the second page of the photos I just submitted to you are 59 and 57, and it shows you their rocks, and it shows you, it makes it look like it's pretty steep, but it's because those rocks were basically piled one on top of the other. They were stacked instead of like an inset or kind of an angled construction. Beyond that, you also see the beach, that the beach has a large amount of cobble closer to the revetments. And then you see there's some sand with a mix closer to the water. And you see that in all of the photos that I'm submitting here, which represent 1,000 linear feet of the beach in this area, going from the end of the bulkhead, first association access way, all the way down to 21 East Shore Drive. So I just wanted you to see in the summer, because my photos I submitted last time were from the spring, so they didn't look as lush and vegetated. So you can see the beach grass behind these is thriving, that the rocks are, some cases they are a little more angled, but in most cases they're stacked one on top of another in a wall situation. So I wanted to just show the consistency of the width of the beach throughout these photos and the consistency of the makeup of the beach, in that the higher beach area, again, is mainly comprised of cobble, and then between the high water mark and that cobble is largely comprised of sand, and seaward of mean high water, you start to get more cobble within the water. Yeah, so that 1,000 linear feet stretches over 11 properties and the association access. That's between my property, my client's property, and the 43 East Shore, which is the first and most recent rock revetment that was allowed. So all of that being said, Marty provided me with a plan that I believe you should probably have in your file.
I don't see it actually. Is this in here?
It looks like this,
Okay.
yes. Along with a survey that he designates the areas that he's drawn. So he's proposing a 3-foot wide by 5 to 6 foot high berm of cobble he's proposing to be 2.5 inch to about 5 inch, I guess, diameter cobble with a 20-foot wide vegetated buffer to go beyond that he's also proposing us to deposit cobble and sand and then plant within that cobble and sand to replace lawn that's existing. So in my little time I've had to really review this, I kind of see this as a temporary fix, particularly for the more severe winter storms that are the main cause of the erosion in this entire area. So I kind of equate it to like a pile of blocks taking the full strength of a bowling ball. It'll do something, but it's not going to last forever. So I don't think that it's going to hold up in these more severe seasonal storm events due to the wave energy that they're seeing in these areas that is causing this escarpment. And if the rocks in the berm are not going to hold, then the plantings that are being requested are going to have a hard time being maintained because there'll be too much shifting for the root systems to take effect. So the fact of the matter is we really wish to maintain our current plan before the board with the addition of a formal beach access walkway that I discussed at the last hearing that we can add to our plans. But we would like to offer the following items. Number one, we would offer a 15-foot vegetated buffer landward of the top of our rocks that would be vegetated with plantings similar to what Mr. Shea outlines here, being beach grass, Spartina patens, switchgrass, bayberry, groundsel. I would say that the shrubs should be concentrated more on the north and south ends of the property, more so on the north to kind of bolster what wave action may occur from action within the association accessway. That basically abuts the entire northern side of my client's property. We also think it's a good idea to supply a sand replenishment agreement, which is something that the town trustees do in situations similar to this where they have jurisdiction to allow for these types of structures. They have a sand replenishment agreement that basically states that in the event that the rocks become exposed, that the owner of the property will continually or annually, whichever is necessary, replenish that sand and cobble overlay on top of the rock, and so it's maintained, so that first level of armoring is maintained. And our plan also shows that we would plant that with beach grass. We could also do Spartina patens. We could mix patens on the bottom and then beach grass more on the top so that it would thrive in that environment. And the last thing that I think is important is that all of those other structures that were approved by the board, whether through hearing or not, 3 of those, again, did not have a hearing. 2 of them did. All of those maybe were not fully constructed in compliance. They received certificates of wetland compliance, but I don't know that all of them were constructed the way that they were planned to be. So my proposal is that if this is granted, that we have some kind of a setup for during construction, periodic, staged compliance checks so that there's a guarantee to the town that this is being constructed according to the plan. Because once it's covered, no one's going to know until it's exposed. So I think that that's probably an important thing for everybody so that we know that we did what we said we're going to do. Just a couple of reminders. My plans that we submitted there are identical in scope to 43 East Shore across the way, which is about 50 feet away from where we're talking about. Our proposal for an angled rock wall is better at dissipating wave action than something that's more straight. We discussed this at the last hearing. We already talked about that of the 5 other approvals, 3 of those did not require this much scrutiny in a hearing situation. They were just granted. We discussed cobble and sand over the rock to be planted to stabilize it. We also discussed the loss of the property, that we estimate about 8 feet of the property was lost between 2018 and 2024. So the goal here is to maintain what was lost before it gets worse. There was no structural peril on any of the 5 properties, nor is there structural peril on this lot. But the goal is to prevent further erosion of the land. And lastly, the New York State DEC granted us a permit for this with no questions asked on October 16th of last year. So we're sitting on that permit. Otherwise, I'm here tonight with Nika Strunk, who would like to make a presentation, unless anyone has any questions for me.
I have a question. It seems like, from what I'm hearing, the thrust of your argument that justifies this project is based on the history of what this board has done on other lots north of this lot.
Yes and no. I mean, yes, of course, but also I'm trying to show you that this lot is not significantly different in elevation and grades than those other ones that were granted. That this lot, there's no natural significant difference to this property than the others.
Okay.
Good evening. Nika Strunk, Nika B. Strunk PLLC, 37 Windmill Lane, Southampton, for the applicant, 37 East Shore Road, LLC. I see, I have a letter to submit tonight, but I see I made a mistake on the, about, at the beginning of it, which I will deal with. But I'm here tonight to basically explain that there is a very serious need for this approval, for this rock revetment. And the need is the same as the need that was present in all of the other 5 applications that Daphne has very carefully set out and explained and demonstrated were granted by this board for rock revetments. This is an area that has a tendency to experience very severe erosion, usually in winter storms. And I've actually been familiar with it for many years because I was originally retained by the owner of 55 East Shore Drive, Jeanette Magnuson, who was had a seawall that collapsed, and she, because of the inaction of the Conservation Department, brought a mandamus proceeding in Suffolk County Supreme Court and was permitted immediately to repair that wall. So her wall was, very seriously damaged. That in and of itself shows the power of the storms that come into this area. I also represented her next door neighbor, Andrea Lamaski, who also, we were ready to go to another mandamus proceeding for her, but this board did grant permission for her to have a rock revetment. She also had experienced severe erosion due to winter storms. I worked with Aram Tertunian on that project, and he did a very in-depth analysis of the what he called the fetch. You may know what, I hope you know, you may know what that means. I learned what it means. I believe it means like the distance. There's that the wind comes to generate wave action at this site, and it is extreme. It's very far. And as a result, this particular area is subject to very severe erosion. And I was also involved with the 43 East Shore Drive, which is the one that Daphne mentioned. It's the Kite Surfer LLC. Right across the association's beach access way, very close to my client's property, which was also granted permission for effectively the exact same thing that we're asking for. There has been tremendous erosion at this site. Daphne has estimated, I believe, 8 feet of land has been subsumed by wave action, and I actually think it may be more. I'm submitting a 2017 survey, which, when I look at it and compare it with the current survey, I see about, I think, 15 feet of actual recession from erosion. So this is a serious situation. It is not only imminent peril to a structure that justifies relief such as this. It is the fact that your land is being subsumed and will continue to be subsumed at an alarming rate. In this case, at least 1 foot per year. That's demonstrated. I think it could be more. And it's also about treating every applicant equally. This board is required to treat similarly situated applications equally. And there have been discussions that there are differences between this property and the 5 others that received approval from this board. And I've set out in my letter that I think that's not the case. There was an argument that the beach in front of this property is primarily bay cobble and therefore less susceptible to erosion than the properties where the relief was granted for protection, which were characterized as primarily sand. I'm including with my package a recent report done by Mr. Shea on February 4th, 2025 for 55 East Shore Road. This is the property with the seawall that was formerly my client's property. She passed away. And in this report, Mr. Shea states, the upper beach immediately seaward of the seawall is largely cobble, with sand more prevalent along the water's edge. So there's cobble all along this stretch. The beach in front of 37 East Shore Drive is not different in kind from the beach in front of 55 East Shore Road. So I think that report demonstrates that, in my opinion. Again, none of the other properties that received approvals had structures that were in imminent peril. That was not the criteria that was applied, and that should not be the criteria that's applied to this application. we're talking about the loss of land, and that is a very serious issue that entitles us to to remediation to allow us to protect from further loss of land, which, I mean, I don't know how long it would take, but it would ultimately, I believe, come to the structure if it were not protected. And another issue that I think, or another point that I think was made, is that the other houses where the approvals were granted, the houses were much closer to the escarpment. I don't believe that's true. I've looked at every survey, and my estimation, and these are estimations, but my estimation is that 43 East Shore Road, the house was about 80 feet back from the scarp. You can see, I mean, it was, well, I guess you can't quite see on that one, but you do have plenty of photos that can demonstrate this. 47 East Shore Road, looks like about 55 feet back from the scarp. 51 East Shore Road, that was Mrs. Lamaski, 45 feet back from the scarp. 57 East Shore Road was 170 feet back from the scarp, and they were allowed a rock revetment. 59 East Shore Road, about 70 feet back from the scarp. Now, I believe ours is approximately 55 feet back from the scarp. So it's these other properties that were granted approvals were not teetering on the edge of a cliff any more than this one is. That's not the standard that this board applied, and it's not the standard that should be applied to this application. Daphne went through this quite clearly. All of the properties that received approval proposed revetments that started at elevation 3 or 4 above sea level and went up to elevation 6 to 8 above sea level, and that is entirely consistent with what we are proposing here. A 15-foot buffer, which is what we're proposing as well, would be consistent with this board's prior approvals. Of the 5 properties on this stretch of beach that received approvals for revetments, there is only one, which was 47 East Shore Road, that did not have a previously covenanted buffer already in place. So they already had buffers. 47 East Shore Road was approved for a revetment with a buffer of 10 feet. So this is larger than was required there. And lastly, as a matter of law, which is the reason that I've been brought in here, this board is required to adhere to its prior precedent. It has to treat all applicants equally. I have 2 cases cited in my letter. One is Hamptons LLC versus Rickenback. You have the site in there. Your counsel can review it, where a special use permit application was, quote, virtually identical to that of a similarly situated property owner in the same zoning district, whose application for the same special use permit had been granted by the appellants. A denial would have been arbitrary and capricious. There's also the decision of Knight versus Amelkin, which is the Court of Appeals, the highest court, that says a decision of an administrative agency which neither adheres to its own prior precedent nor indicates its reason for reaching a different conclusion on essentially the same facts is arbitrary and capricious. So I submit that as a matter of law, given this board's history of allowing property owners on this very, very vulnerable stretch of beach to protect their land, it would be arbitrary and capricious not to grant the application. And I'm just going to make a little correction to my letter, and I'll submit it this evening. Thank you very much. I'm just going to write my name here. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. Erosion is a natural process. It occurs along every bay beach, along every ocean beach. You have a seasonal change from winter beach to summer beach, periodic storms. The erosion that occurs along beaches is not something that's artificial. It's part of how the natural Bay Beach ecosystem functions. The degree of erosion at the subject property right now is not significant. The escarpment is about 1 to 2 feet. The home is actually located outside of the FEMA flood zone. And the improvements are located significantly landward of the beach. So they are at present at no risk of flood or storm damage, nor is there any evidence of some recent damage occurring to those structures as a consequence of winter storms. While the site conditions at every property are somewhat different, just in quickly touching upon the permitting of rock further north. Much of that, I believe, was done as a response and reaction to the court-ordered construction of a 6-foot-high concrete wall at 55 East Shore Drive. There was significant concern on part of some that the presence of that seawall, which this board did not permit, would have potential significant consequences in terms of downdrift erosion. And I think for that reason, the board was kind of in an awkward position. They had to respond partly to approximate neighbor concerns about what impacts over time the presence of that court-ordered concrete seawall on the beach would have in terms of downdrift effects. When we get an application like this, consistent with the wetland permit issuance standards, there are a number of issues that we need to, and a number of factors that we need to consider. First, we need to look at whether or not the project plans are reasonable and necessary, considering the present beach erosion and escarpment conditions. And they certainly don't appear to be, there certainly doesn't appear to be a need to do something like so drastic as to install a heavy rock stone and rock armor along this beachfront. One of the reasons why there's been some erosion is that this landowner has been looking to continue to maintain a lawn extending from the residence right out to the beachfront. Lawn is very shallow rooted. So when you get a significant storm event and the waters come up high on the property and lap over that edge of lawn, there is nothing to hold the soil together. The lawn easily collapses. And I saw this after Superstorm Sandy when I visited countless properties waterfront properties that had lawn going to bulkheads or going to beach, they were the areas that were most impacted by storms, where properties that had naturally vegetated buffers suffered little or no impact. Some of the things that we need to look at with an application like this is what are the impacts in terms of wetland impacts of modifying the beach and installing armoring. One of the impacts is the loss of essential wetlands, the loss of buffer, which Chapter 325 is intended to protect, and loss of that critical ecotone between the upper beach and the uplands. That is an area where you get a successive storm rack, and that area, that storm rack is critical habitat for a wide range of insects, beetles, flies, sand crabs, beach hoppers, isopods. These animals provide essential food for shorebirds and other birds that forage along the upper beach and along the rack. It's also an area where oftentimes you'll have young crabs refuge and hide in the rack line, so they're not easily preyed upon by gulls and other wildlife. So there's a whole ecosystem in that rack that's so essential to the wetland dependent wildlife and to the greater bay ecosystem. So when you change that area by installing rock, you're destroying a lot of that habitat, that natural upper habitat. You also can significantly modify the topography in a way that provides, that interferes with diamondback terrapins. Well, diamondback terrapins are estuarine turtles, and what they have to do is they have to leave the bay, go up to the higher sand and upland areas in order to lay their eggs. And if you have rock or you have major modifications that are made to the landform, it becomes a lot more difficult to for diamondback terrapins to reach those higher nesting grounds. And if they reach those grounds, it becomes a lot more difficult for the hatchlings to return to the bay. So the area that would be impacted by the construction of the revetment is an essential habitat area for wetland dependent wildlife. When there is concern about potential environmental impacts, what the wetland permit issuance standards require is that the applicant evaluate practicable alternatives. The goal of that process is to look to select the practicable alternative that would be least environmentally damaging to the wetlands, and in this case, the greater bay and beach ecosystem inclusive of that critical ecotone that takes in that upper beach and transition to uplands. And one of the things that I did is spend quite a lot of time looking at areas that are unarmored along the Little Peconic Bay at present, the Noack Bay as well. And what I can offer into the record are countless photos of very similar beaches that have naturally occurring vegetation. Some of it is dense, some of it includes shrubs like groundsel. Other areas, it's basically consists of grasses. But what you have in these areas is you have a gradually sloping beach, you have a higher natural berm of cobble, and it's in that cobble area where you have naturally occurring vegetation. So one of the things that I'll hand out are photos that were taken at many of these locations. And while, you're looking at the top photo and you're seeing very dense vegetation at one side, if you go through these photos, and I indicated where the photos were taken, you'll see in many cases you have a similar cobble beach. Many of these areas have a similar fetch as occurs at the subject premises. And what I tried to do in these photos is indicate the predominant native vegetation that's growing in those areas. And what you'll see is if you allow the natural cobble to build up and you potentially replenish that area with additional cobble in order to create a higher berm, you can achieve the goals of stabilizing the beach. One of the photos in particular that will jump out to you, and this was taken along Noack Bay, is on page 12, where you're seeing very similar beach conditions, beaches that are vulnerable to winter storm events that are predominantly cobble. And you can see that this landowner is maintaining a naturally vegetated buffer. It's only about 20 feet wide, and landward of that buffer, they have an extensive lawn area. They have a wood plat and a sitting area. And these conditions have remained static for many years because of the presence of that natural vegetation. Some of these photos were taken at locations that the applicant would be quite familiar with because of other applications that were filed with the board. But you could see that the if you look at page 18 and 11 West Shore Drive, what you're seeing is a higher cobble beach, a corridor of grass, as seaside goldenrod, a higher berm of cobble that then drops down to low wetland and upland meadow. And that higher berm cobble and natural vegetation is stabilizing that beach. It's very effective at stabilizing that beach. I'm not gonna go through each of these photos, but after looking at many of these sites, I decided to come forward with a proposal to recreate similar conditions at the subject property. And that's why I provided this sketch and cross view of the type of natural upper beach restoration that would likely be highly effective in achieving the applicant's present goals of lessening erosion and providing additional stabilization of that upper beach. And there was a question that was raised regarding some of the elevations that I noted on the sketch. These elevations were actually taken off the topography from the applicant's survey. And consistent with the sketch that I also provided, where I overlaid potential higher cobble berm corridor and buffer, the plans would call for recommended 3-foot high cobble berm. I think the applicant had said a 6-foot high cobble berm. No, actually, the berm that I'm showing here would be 3 feet high and would be about 5 to 6 feet wide. There would be additional sand replenishment landward of that berm. And then there would yet be allowance for the applicant to maintain an expansive lawn landward of that buffer and landward of that berm. What's nice about small cobble berms is they kind of act as indicated below. They act as a speed bump or a more dynamic revetment that can shift with the coastline over time, that can naturally collect additional cobble. So I think it's absolutely, before we entertain constructing a revetment at this property, I, again, as indicated at the first hearing on this application, think that the applicant needs to come forward with a natural shoreline restoration plan. In future years, if the conditions change drastically, so much so that the residents and improvements at this site are indeed at risk of damage from flooding and erosion, of course, I would welcome a future application from the landowner to come forward with a different plan for this site. But, looking at the site conditions and looking at similar conditions elsewhere, I see that installation of a rock revetment would not only result in direct impact and loss of wetlands and essential buffering area, it would have adverse impacts to the ecology of this area, to wetland dependent animals and wildlife. The applicant had offered that if the revetment is permitted and it was to be buried with sand and planted with beach grass, that the applicant could commit to replenishing the sand and beach grass if that rock revetment becomes exposed, and possibly increases risk of seaward erosion because of deflective wave action. We tried that in many years past. It's very hard to enforce requirement whereby every year the beach conditions are monitored, and if the exposure of the rock or erosion exceeds a certain threshold, then the landowner is required to spend significant amounts of money to replenish the sand and beach grass. Many of these properties change hands frequently, and I, for one, would not want to put that kind of burden on the landowner, that every year they're under the gun that in the event that the permitted rock gets exposed, they're going to have to spend the money to place sand above that rock. The difficulty with revetments is if indeed they do become exposed, even if you place enormous amounts of sand over that revetment, the sand quickly filters down through that rock. It dissipates over time. It's easily impacted by high water events, impacted by rainwater and runoff as well. And just puts the town in a very awkward position to have to require a landowner to replenish sand to overtop a rock revetment whenever that becomes exposed, especially when there are practicable alternatives here, namely natural shoreline restoration through placement of additional cobble to create a stronger cobble berm on the higher beach, replenishment with additional sand, and planting of deep rooted vegetation landward of that cobble in order to hold that sand and soil and to support that more landward lawn in the event that there is significant high water. The sites that are depicted on the photos that I shared with the applicant and the board, many of these sites infrequently experience high water events and winter storm events. But the natural vegetation and the higher naturalized cobble berms are stabilizing those beaches. Those beaches are showing no evidence of very significant erosion trends. So I would ask that the applicant revisit their proposal and consider further coming forward with a natural shoreline restoration alternative for this site. As consideration of practicable alternatives is a requirement as per the wetland permit issuance standards set forth in Chapter 325, again with the goal of going forward with the least environmentally damaging alternative. Thank you. And I would just mention, I think the board has a copy of my the survey on which I sketched the recommended cobble berm and 20-foot buffer as well. Thank you.
So, as many of you may know, I have, for the past 24 years, been working in the town of Southampton, either as a town employee or on the private side. In the past 24 years, I have done permits for both sides, up and down this stretch. I have been going to this beach for 24 years. In looking at this bunch of photos that Marty provided, the main difference between these beaches and this beach is that these beaches in this packet are entirely cobble. There's very little sand here.
Thank you.
Where here, historically, there has been cobble, some sand, and then some more cobble in and out of the water. This beach has never been like these. It just has never been this way, to my knowledge. So, although all of that sounds great, it's not what's been happening here forever. If you look at the aerials for this, it's a different location. This is a westerly facing area where some of these beaches that Marty's showing in here, although they are westerly facing, they're different from here because they're comprised of more cobble. The ones up more closer to Noyak Bay are facing east, so they're not getting that westerly wind, which in the winter you get northwest storms, which are causing this problem. Marty purported that my client has not seen any damage structurally to his property. We discussed at the last meeting that there is a paver walkway that was put in by the prior owner, who was also my client. And that has sustained damage. I had shown photos at the last meeting of scouring underneath the walkway. Part of the reason that that set of stairs was constructed by the prior owner and reinforced by my client were because of the erosion that occurred between our last discussion of this property in 2017 and my client taking over this property about a year and change ago. So, yes, although it's not to the residents, it is damage to the property. There was landscaping there, albeit Rosa Rugosa and Montauk Daisy, that were part of that shorefront. That stuff has been eroded away or taken out from the storms.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
That one of the points that was made as was that the erosion that you've described is partially caused by the lawn being extended as far as it is. Do you think that that could be part of the cause of the erosion?
Well, it certainly is exacerbating it when the waves are hitting the property. That, yeah, there isn't any deep-rooted vegetation necessarily. But if you look at the photos that I provided tonight going down the line, a lot of these properties don't have vegetation and historically have not had vegetation, and they're also suffering damage. Some of them
I think
are more
we have to-
beach
I think
driven.
it's our obligation to look at this particular property, and I understand a legal argument has now been submitted that I think we're going to need to take the advice of counsel on, I assume. And we'll take a little time to look at it, but putting aside the other properties and the precedential requirements that maybe exist as a result of those, my question is really going to this question of, are there other ways to prevent the erosion that you're expressing as the need for the revetment? If the lawn is indeed, the lack of deep roots is actually contributing to the erosion, there are other things that could be done
Right.
besides the
And
revetment.
as I mentioned, we're proposing a 15-foot buffer landward of the rock. that would provide, obviously, better native plants versus a lawn. And in that buffer, if it would be acceptable to do what Marty suggested, to add sand and cobble so that it's a little more beefy, let's say, instead of just planting it in the existing substrate, sure, that's a possibility. This property, I went through a whole permitting process for redevelopment of this property in 2017 with the prior owner. That the board had required at that time a 75-foot buffer. My client at that time was unable to get his bank to sign off on the covenant and decided instead of dealing with this hassle, he was going to sell the property. So he sold the property to my now client, and when he took it over, he doesn't have any plans of redeveloping right now. Otherwise, we'd be discussing probably a much larger scope of work. Right now, he just wants to maintain the property that has been lost, and he's willing to provide, a reasonable buffer that is similar to what's been required in other areas, to take up some of that lawn to help bolster this.
But you're saying that's after you put in a revetment.
Yes.
And I guess my question was going to, putting aside the revetment, are there things that could be done to mitigate the erosion short of a revetment, somewhere between a lawn and a revetment?
So what Marty is talking about, again, I see as a temporary fix, because what he basically just said is that we should do what he's suggesting, and in the event that that doesn't work, then we can come back and talk about something a little more shore hardening situation like what we're proposing now. But why are we experimenting? This is not, well, he's also talking about a sand replenishment, about asking people to spend money to constantly replenish the sand. Aren't you asking that of people with every non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer? Theoretically speaking, if a big storm comes and people have a buffer and it's destroyed and the vegetation is no longer there, those people would effectively be cited for a violation and be required to replant that buffer, theoretically speaking. And that costs thousands and thousands of dollars, depending on the size and scope of the buffer. So to me, it's six one, half dozen the other. You're guaranteeing that someone's going to, in their own benefit, maintain the overtop of this structure. It's to their benefit, more so than they would imagine a buffer to be. Most people look at buffers as a punishment. I don't see it that way. However, people look at it that way. So in this case, we're talking about maintaining the first line of defense for your structure that's going to take the brunt of things. So if you're maintaining that regularly, it's giving you a better chance of survival. Let's be dramatic. So most of the year, water is not touching this high part of the beach. Most of the year it's not, as evidenced by the photos I just gave you. The water is way down, mean high water is far away. But in the winter is when you're seeing these problems. And it's because of the west-facing properties. So this, and I noted this at the last hearing, the need for this is not for the majority of the year, but it is for the part of the year where it's pretty serious. So that's it. What else? I think that is all I have. Nika, do you have anything?
I'll just quickly say that these, the photos, I think I saw a date of them on them of June 9th, and the drawings were dated June 10th. We just got them. So I think it would make sense in this case for us to adjourn to a later date so that we can really give a complete response to what has been suggested here. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you. We need to wrap this up to get on with the rest of the agenda, but I just want to summarize what I've heard, what I've seen, and the board can add to that if they see fit. There are a few things that have come out here in this discussion. One is that the essence of the legal argument is this should get a structure because another place got a structure. Another argument is that there is significant erosion here. These are the parts of the applicant. I'm not sure what all the facts are, because when staff gives a report of other beaches that have significant deeper rooted plants that seem to be holding, and the contrast is that those are all cobble beaches. The NECA's trunk report number 1 says this entire stretch of beach is primarily cobble. So which is it? Is it different because it's cobble, or is it the same because it's cobble?
Well,
I don't-
just to clarify that, and I noted this earlier, the upper part of the beach is cobble, and I show you that for 1,000 linear feet down the whole stretch. And then you can see in those photos that there's sand in between.
So we need to get the facts straight. We need to establish if there's a problem, and then establish that there are to explore alternatives to find the least environmental damaging design that would work. Now, I know, as you've said, Daphne, you've been around the block and you've seen all sides of the block because you've been there a long time and seen inside and outside of Town Hall. That gives you an advantage over many others. You also know that when we look at shore hardening structures, the tendency is that they will eventually cause the beach to disappear. They also have the tendency to cause damage on the downward side of the beach. We have to be sensitive to the negative impacts of projects to be approved. So we are not jumping into approving a shore hardening device without deeply exploring other alternatives. And as the law states, the assumption is other alternatives are less damaging to the environment. It's been well established there's no imminent peril. The point that if there weren't shore hardening structures north of here, this may not be an application that would be put forth. But that's conjecture. But those are the primary arguments of what you've been using, what you both have been using, of why you deserve a shore hardening device here. So the call is for you to explore alternatives, see if there's something else that might work. Staff has come up with a plan. That may not be the plan that you want to have, but it's given us an alternative, and it seems to be a less environmentally harmful alternative. So we have to be seeing why that will not work, especially in light of the fact that we don't see erosion on this property or neighboring properties. So you've got your work cut out for you. I'm not saying that we should just bend over and give you a rock revetment because you say, well, the other guy got it, so why can't I? We need a lot more than that. Because the tendency is that every homeowner on this stretch will eventually get a shore hardening device, and there'll be no more beach. We want to avoid that.
I disagree with that, because with where there's
Daphne, you had your say. Your say is over now. I'm summarizing and going on to the next step. I don't want to prolong this any longer.
Okay.
I'm not looking for a response. I'm telling you where I see we are and what your charge is. So if you see a response to that, I want to hear that next meeting.
Got it.
Any other additions? So, when do you want to come back?
August 27th. August 27th, yeah. September 10th, September 24th.
Let's say the 24th.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this application?
Motion to adjourn to September 24th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Give me a second to get all my papers back. Everybody hand them back, please.
Tom, do you want this back as well?
I have a bunch of them, but you can keep it if you want.
I'm gonna keep that there. I don't know what's with this one.
Oops, sorry. You're gonna keep everything else?
No, I'm passing it down. I just,
Either keep it or give it.
yes, sir.
Be patient.
Some of us are confused.
We good?
Yep.
A024057, Gregory Robbins and Linda Robbins.
I have a couple handouts. Would that be possible? I don't have enough to pass around. It's, I think, 4 total. Is it possible for everybody to share?
Anything you hand out's gonna be retained. You have to have it stamped in first, but even if it's not enough copies. Share.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Maseria. I'm a civil engineer from LK McLean Associates, representing the owners of 31 East Shore Drive in Southampton. At the last public meeting on May 28th, I presented a shoreline stabilization project which involved the construction of a stone revetment, timbered beach access staircase, and a 10-foot wide vegetated buffer. Because our design was not well received by the town, we went back to the drawing board and we came up with another alternative, in addition to what was described in our alternatives analysis provided to the town. Design is similar to what was originally proposed, but we've made the following changes. We've reduced the overall size of the revetment. It was originally 4 larger stones, currently 3. We lowered the top of the revetment slightly, and we extended the beach profile up and over the top of the revetment. The staircase as well as the 10-foot wide non-turf buffer remain landward of the cobble on top of the revetment. The cobblestone, which is to be placed on top of the revetment, will match what is currently on the beach, and therefore maintaining the existing habitat that currently exists at the site. The homeowner, in good faith, has also agreed to replenish the cobble as necessary to prevent exposure of the revetment, which will maintain the aesthetics of the beach and will also maintain the existing habitat. As the beach erodes over time, the homeowner has agreed to fill that area back in. During the design process, wave heights used for the evaluation of various shoreline protection features were calculated by our engineers in accordance with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Shore Protection Manual, with a fetch of approximately 5 miles to the northwest. These calculations can produce wave heights upwards of 7 feet, depending on the still water conditions at the time of the storm event. As stated in the New York State Department of Environmental Tidal Wetlands Guidance, dated 2017, vegetation can't withstand waves in excess of 5 feet. I find that to be closer to 2 or 3 feet, but seeing as how the calculations show that the waves would be well in excess of that, in either case, vegetation alone would not survive in this case. Based on these calculations and our observations of the shoreline, we find it necessary to harden the shoreline through the construction of the revetment. However, to ensure that there are no adverse impacts, we included the cobblestone over the top of the revetment, which will continue to be replenished. This was successfully completed at 43 East Shore Drive, which is approximately 183 feet to the north. We went there recently, I believe in June, and it looks nice to me. There was small pieces of the revetment that might be exposed, but otherwise it basically just looks like the beach profile extends up onto the top of the revetment. In the event that we do see a severe storm in the winter, the stone might become temporarily exposed, and it would become covered again following the storm. At our last meeting, it was discussed how much of the beach has eroded, and I didn't really have a great answer to that, but I had said it was several feet. But in reviewing the historic surveys that were provided by the homeowner, on average between 1964, 1974, and today, the erosion is approximately 15 feet between the high water marks, which means over the last 51 years or so, we've lost approximately 3.36 inches of beach per year. What happened in between 1974 and today? Maybe there was a big storm, but either way, sometime between then and now, this beach has receded approximately 15 feet. This does vary with the seasons, but without a regular supply of sand on this beach, as a result of a lot of the upstream structures that have been installed, there's not a regular supply, and therefore the beach is not going to continue to be restored. As previously mentioned at the prior topic, shoreline stabilization features have been implemented at 43, 47, 51, 55, 57, 59, and 65 East Shore Drive. What we're proposing represents what I think is like the least robust of all the ones along that shoreline and seems to be holding up well. Not only will this serve to protect my client's property from the wave action, but in the event that this stone actually does wash out that might be covering the beach, it will continue to replenish the beach on the downdrift ends and in the areas in front of the stone that will be temporarily exposed. So basically, we're proposing nearly identical to what was proposed and is working rather well at 43 East Shore Drive. We currently have all of our permits in place with the exception of the town, and that is all I have for today.
Could you tell us approximately how many feet the expanse is between your proposed revetment and the water?
I would say it's about 20 feet between our, the toe of the stone and the spring high water mark. But that, like was discussed earlier, the storms that this is being designed for is not your run-of-the-mill high tide event. This is the extreme weather events when you're getting 50, 80 mile an hour winds out of the northwest, battering the shoreline. So in this, to add to that, I guess, as well, any sort of vegetated feature or cobble or anything like that will be washed out with certainty, like if it's in this wave action area.
So that means if the erosion and putting a shore hardening device in will not stop the erosion. It will simply provide some kind of a backdrop to say, hey, that's as far as you can go.
Correct.
Until we get one of those storms that says, I don't care how big this structure is, we're going to take it out.
Right. Yeah, and that was our thought process. Like, we want to say, this is as much land as hopefully the homeowner will lose. And, when that storm happens, and we know that it will, the homeowner will build it back again, and he's going to be donating sand and cobble and everything else back to the beach area.
So if you take your 1964 to present, so we're looking at 50 years, well, more than 50 years. 60 years.
Yeah, I went with the shorter of the two.
60 years. Does your computation show an increased rate of erosion during the last 30 versus the previous 30?
We're lacking surveys in between. So oddly, though, to be perfectly honest, between 1964 and 74, I believe the beach was actually further out in 64 for whatever reason. So it obviously does fluctuate, and it was minor, it's within like a couple of feet. But it's between 74 and today, it's about 15 feet, which is pretty considerable.
So 15 feet in 50 years.
Yep.
So in another 50 years, it'll be 5 feet of beach at the same rate.
Correct. And so what we are doing here is we bury the stone beneath the ground to prevent that top layer from becoming undermined. So in the event that that beach does keep dropping, and say the water is deeper, our stone will still stay in place. That's why it's critical to make sure that's buried as far as it is. But the fact that we're replenishing it, the homeowner at 43 is also replenishing it. Maybe these sort of measures will prevent this same rate of erosion, might be less, like with the added cobble to the beach.
Does the lack of the beach in another 50 years concern your client?
I think that it would, yeah.
But probably if this structure is put in, there will be no recourse. The die is cast. The beach goes.
I don't think that this is going to cause any erosion. And I think the fact that he's adding the soil or the stone back to the beach is going to slow that rate of erosion down.
I don't think adding stone changes the rate of erosion. It just changes where the erosion is going to be. It's going to be in the beach, and when the beach gets used up, it's going to be what's added. That is very concerning to me, and also concerning to me is how that might affect other homes nearby.
I would say majority of the homes, there might be like 3 or 4 total along the stretch that don't have some sort of hardening feature. Of the 7 properties or so to the north, all have them, with the exception of, I think, the area with the homeowners beach association that has access. But even if you go downdrift, I didn't mention them because they were like a little less substantial, but there's 2 or 3 homes that also have hardened features.
So when you say,
And our revetment, quite honestly, it's like 2 feet high. It's like one large rock. You know, we're trying to just lock in, you know, the end of this property. I do think we're almost following the exact slope of the beach. It's a very minor improvement here, in addition to the fact that we are taking the lawn out. So I think all of these aspects combined should help to keep this area stable. And I do think that replenishment, though, of this property as well as the other properties will slow down that rate of erosion.
Are you proposing a buffer from the crest of that revetment towards the house?
Yeah, it's 10 feet. So currently the homeowner has grass between the escarpment, we'll call it, all the way back to the house. And there's some sort of upland species kind of mixed throughout that would be replaced with American beach grass and some other native wetland plantings.
okay, I may have questions later. Marty?
Good evening, Morris Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. As was discussed at the first hearing on this application, I see nothing about the current conditions or the historical trend in erosion at this property that would warrant installation of an engineered rock revetment. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated April 17, 2025 that details the concerns that I have with regard to potential adverse wetland impacts resulting from armoring of a shoreline. The residence located outside landward of the FEMA designated flood zones. So the residence is secure. This is notwithstanding that there may have been some retreat in the shoreline over 50 or more years. The improvements are located at significant setbacks landward of the beach. So there is an opportunity for the applicant to continue to enjoy their property without making some massive changes to the beachfront. Notwithstanding the applicant's apparent commitment to replenish any lost sand or cobble as a result of any exposure of the rock, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to enforce those types of conditions. I, for one, think they become unduly burdensome to the landowner. My preference, of course, is to look at less environmentally practicable alternatives that might work at this site. So the applicant is, of course, looking for significant relief from the required wetland setbacks for any types of structures or buffering at this property. The placement of rock, if in the event that it becomes exposed, poses risk of downdrift erosion impacts to other properties that are presently, like the subject property on Almond. So we need to be concerned not only about deflection of wave energy off an exposed revetment and how that might lower the foreshore beach, but how those erosion impacts could also affect downdrift properties. one of the town's goals has always been to maintain the public's right to foreshore access to walk this beach. So I have great concern about any armoring because the likelihood is that armoring over time will actually increase erosion rates and lead to a diminishment of the public's right to foreshore access. At the first hearing, I had shared with the board photos of the subject beach front. I'll hand those up again. Notwithstanding that winter storm event had damaged some vegetation on the upper beach. The beach is stable. The applicants are looking to maintain a lawn extending almost entirely to the beach. Lawns are shallow rooted. When you have storm events where high water comes up to the lawn can't hold that soil. So the presence and continued maintenance of an expansive lawn is only contributing to the erosion at this property. Again, as part of the record for this hearing, I can offer photos that were shared with the board at the prior hearing of other naturalized beaches in the area, which I will share with the applicant. That shows that significant upper beach cobble and natural vegetation can be very effective in achieving the goals of providing good stabilization of the beach. So I'm not convinced at this time that the applicant has demonstrated that there are no environmentally less damaging practicable alternatives. I'm also not convinced that the construction of a rock revetment is warranted. There is no emergency at this property. And while conditions, of course, could continue to be monitored to see if there are drastic changes in the shoreline, I think if the applicant comes forward with a plan for further replenishment of that upper beach with cobble, backed by significant native vegetation and establishment of a buffer at least 20 feet, you in all likelihood are going to see significant benefits in terms of stabilizing that upper beach. The property is large enough that notwithstanding any natural shoreline restoration that I'm recommending, the applicant will still benefit from an expansive lawn, seaward of the residents. So I just, at this time, I don't see that the project plans meet the standards for wetland permit issuance because, as indicated, the applicant needs to make clear demonstration that there are no other practicable alternatives. And that includes natural shoreline restoration, elimination of some of that lawn, heavy planting of the types of natives that you see at these other naturally stable beaches, and then continued monitoring of the property. Thank you.
Any response?
Yeah, I'll just touch on a couple of the points that were made. And that said, we understand that it's a burden to, or the homeowner, understands that it's a burden to have to replenish the cobble, but he has agreed to do that because, you know, he's obviously in favor of the project. We find that the revetment, in theory, is consistent with a lot of the photos provided in that you wouldn't even see it. So it's going to be acting in the same manner for 95% of the time. There might be some temporary instances where it becomes exposed, but then the homeowner would have to recover that revetment again. And just regarding the photos that were provided, every site's different. Wave calculations are based on the depth of the water, the wind direction, the phase of exposure, the seasons that impact it, the temperature of the air and the water, and a lot of other things. So like there might be an instance that is okay. Like this picture looks great here, but I'm sure that they're not getting 7-foot waves because if they were, this wouldn't survive. And that's my opinion. I would have to look into some of these a little bit more closely, but vegetation, generally speaking, does not survive in a high wave energy environment, which our particular site is located.
As an engineer, you got the capability of doing those calculations to figure out what the what a 5-mile fetch wave height might be. Do you have any historical data to show what the maximum wave height has been in the past 50 years?
I do not, but we have documented wind speeds from certain storm events that we could correlate that to, if need be.
Just because it can on certain conditions, it's probably very rare that it actually does happen. Because if it did happen, we'd probably see erosion, significant erosion throughout the beach area, but we don't. And one storm is probably not going to destroy the whole beach.
I wouldn't say destroy. I think it slowly eats away at it over time, which I think is probably the main reason why most of the homeowners are transitioning to the hardened features.
My observation experience with beaches is that the erosion does not occur on a straight line graph. It goes in bunches. It might be a couple of seasons or even a couple of storms where there's a significant erosion, then for the next 20 years there may not be any. We don't know when any of those are going to occur. And that's why we get concerned, because it could be tomorrow. We don't know.
Right.
Well, here we are, similar to the last hearing which you sat through, and I could say the same things all over again. You've heard them from Marty. We need to hear some very real reasons why a shore hardening device is necessary here, given that the beach does not appear to be particularly vulnerable, and we don't see the damage here that is imminent. And we haven't seen practical alternatives, particularly those involving not shore hardening devices, but plantings. And recognizing that maybe by your calculations, plantings will not survive the worst storm possible. But the danger is a shore hardening device might erode and make the erosion worse. So we're concerned about this property as well as neighboring properties. I'd like to see a planting program that would be an alternative that may suit the needs of your client, as well as protect the shoreline and protect other properties. We need to adjourn this. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this application? Do you have a date in mind that you'd like to come back?
Can I follow up with my client and get back to you on that, or do we have to?
We need
We
to
have to choose
set
a
a
date
date
tonight.
now.
Okay. Then that September 24th
Okay.
would be okay.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Postpone until September 24th, adjourn till September 24th,
Seconded.
2025.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. advisory reports are next. And the planning board is 26 Mill Road.
The shade chief environmental analyst for the town. Say pending residential two-lot subdivision application for a tract that's partially developed at 26 Mill Road in Remsenburg, Spionk. There are several recommended comments. First is that pursuant to section 292-39B, draft conditions of final conditional map approval relating to wetland preservation will need to be forwarded to the Conservation Board for future consideration and adoption of a resolution, as the rear portions of proposed parcel 2 appear to lie within 200 feet of town regulated wetlands to the east. Second, the survey depiction of proposed parcel 2 as a wooded area is incorrect, as based upon an August 6, 2025 Environment Division field assessment, more than 15 large native trees were recently cut and felled without authorization, destroying key forested watershed land for the approximate upper Spionk River, as well as showing disregard for the environmental benefits once offered in terms of thermal cooling, carbon sequestration, and air purification. This is particularly concerning in light of recently documented record-breaking average high global temperatures and what unfortunately appears to be an unstoppable climate change. Habitat for native flora, insects, songbirds, eastern box turtle, white-tailed deer, and other wildlife was also affected. The merits of the wooded property in terms of maintaining community character, as well as potential need for a wetland permit prior to tree cutting and site disturbance, appear to have been largely ignored. Thirdly, this resulting environmental damage needs to be countered by requiring that the remaining large white oaks and eastern red cedars be protected to the maximum extent practicable, and by requiring that significant portions of the tract be reforested. In that regard, any pre-application approval strictly should be conditioned upon the applicant coming forward with a native tree planting and partial woodland recovery plan. Additionally, natural land needs to be protected at the rear of parcel 2 in order to bolster and support the abutting 1.8 acres of town preserved land to the north. Fourth, a conservation easement needs to be utilized as a means of establishing, preserving a wildlife movement corridor and dispersal route, as well as a natural habitat connection with the abutting northerly town preserve. Creation of a minimum 50-foot wide conservation buffer is being recommended along the easterly rear lot line of parcel 2.
Motion to send those comments to the,
There's one more.
I'm sorry, there's one more recommended comment. Lastly, the subdivision map also needs to be revised to note that construction of a new dwelling on parcel 2 will be conditioned upon installation of a new IAOWTS, thereby lessening negative effects on ground and surface water quality.
motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For the ZBA, Eric and Marlo Bamberger.
This pending variance application relates to an existing developed property that just received Conservation Board approval to be redeveloped at 59 Bayview Drive East in the hamlet of Noyak.
There are 3 recommended advisory comments. The first confirms that the survey is prepared by Paul Borelski, dated August 5, 2024, last revised June 10, 2025, which was filed with the pending variance application, has already been conditionally approved by the Conservation Board on June 11, 2025, contingent upon recording of a covenant establishing wetland preservation area, naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer extending 75 feet landward of the wetland boundary. 2, notwithstanding this approval, the uplands at the site are marked by a considerable number of mature native trees with significant value in terms of community character, carbon sequestration, thermal cooling, air purification, wildlife habitat. Thirdly, tree protection zones should therefore be established wherever practicable to minimize tree loss and preserve these benefits.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Dana R. Rubin and Robert J. Gottlieb.
This variance application relates to waterfront property at 6 Noack Harbor Road, Noack, that contains considerable wetlands. First, it's indicating that the existing residential improvements as depicted on the survey that was submitted with the pending variance application, inclusive of the 2-story detached garage for which a variance is being sought to allow for an accessory apartment, have been authorized by the Conservation Board pursuant to wetland permit number CB 18033, which was issued on March 29, 2018. Said permit was contingent upon recording of a covenant establishing a wetland preservation area, a naturally vegetated wetland, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer landward of the wetland boundary. 2, certificate of wetland compliance number CWC 220003 was granted on January 25, 2022, thereby deeming the improvements compliant with the terms and conditions of permit CB 18033 and closing out the wetland permit. Lastly, no additional wetland permits or approvals are needed to authorize the garage conversion to accessory apartment.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? John and Meredith Noonan.
The Noonan application relates to residentially developed property at 284 East Montauk Highway in Hampton Bays. There are 2 comments that are being offered. The first is that the proposed residential redevelopment plans as depicted on the survey as prepared by Ralph Heil, dated November 5, 2020, with the latest revision date of September 12, 2024, for which a variance is being sought, received a letter of wetland non-jurisdiction pursuant to Chapter 25 of the Town Code on December 5, 2024. And second, no wetland permits or approvals are needed. Moreover, as an IAOWTS is being installed, there are no significant environmental concerns regarding this application.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Watermill Building Supply Realty LLC.
This pending variance application relates to a subdivision that's being considered by the planning board. The track is located on Montauk Highway in Watermill. The first comment confirms that the track, which is proposed for subdivision, is located greater than 200 feet landward of the nearest town-regulated freshwater wetlands. Second, it's indicated as the track is located within the town's high priority water quality improvement zone and the county designated Mecox Bay and tributaries watershed. The new commercial building should be serviced by a nitrogen reducing IAOWTS with intended sanitary improvements detailed on the subdivision map. And lastly, the new commercial building should be equipped with solar panels, and that's in order to reduce energy demand.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? South Dune Builders LLC.
This relates to a residentially developed property at 4 Cricket Path near hamlet of Remsenburg, Spion. First, it's indicated that the plan first and second floor residential additions for which variances are being sought are located greater than 200 feet landward of the nearest town regulated wetlands. Thus, the planned improvements do not require a wetland permit. Second, as significant home expansion is planned, a nitrogen-reducing innovative alternative on-site wastewater treatment system needs to be installed. And thirdly, the location and configuration of the intended IA or WTS needs to be shown on the survey.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Martin Vidgefinkel and Julie Jalima.
This pending variance application before the CBA relates to residentially developed property at 46 Peconic Bay Avenue in the hamlet of North Sea. There are two brief comments that are being offered. The first indicates that, as indicated by the applicant, the planned improvements for which variance is being sought have already been authorized pursuant to Conservation Board Wetland Permit number CB 22035. And second, Administrative Wetland Permit number, renewal number REN 25043, CB 22035-1, was issued on August 6, 2025, thereby extending the term of the permit to July 29, 2026.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The administrative wetland permits are in your packets. Resolution of conditional approval, A 021077, Anthony Rapillo. This is postponed to August 27th.
Motion to postpone to August 27, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024044, Bradley A. Edgar and Lauren D. Edgar. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Bradley Edgar and Lauren Edgar for the proposed project of the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
A 024068, 134 Middle Pond Road LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to 134 Middle Pond Road LLC for the proposed project of the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025020, Burnett, 2012 Family Trust. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Burnett, 2012 Family Trust for the proposed project for the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 0250, not just did that. A 025022, 308 Town Point Road LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval is granted to 308 Town Point Road LLC for the proposed project by the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025021, Mark Charbonneau and Donna Charbonneau. This is postponed to August 27th.
Motion to postpone to August 27, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
August 27th, right? Or August,
August 27, 2025.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review signature determination, A 024062, 390 Fowler Lane LLC.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This application relates to residentially developed oceanfront property that also has frontage on Jewel Pond and contains extensive wetlands. The application has been made as indicated by the July 30, 2025 preliminary advisory report, in order to seek a wetland permit to undertake a pilot Phragmites management project in the interest of enhancing native biodiversity. The work would be accomplished by repeated selective hand cutting and removal of Phragmites while avoiding trampling and disturbance to other native vegetation. No herbicides would be utilized. I have put forward a plan that the applicant has agreed to, wherein in addition to removing unauthorized deer fences as part of the work, the Phragmites management would adhere to strict seasonal restrictions to avoid potential adverse impacts to breeding and wintering wildlife. The work would also be phased in. I provided a drawing which would allow for commencement of the Phragmites removal in the western sector of the property. And if as a consequence of monitoring that work is successful, then they would proceed with the remaining proposed Phragmites management in the easterly sector of the property. As part of the work, they would also look to hand cut and remove other non-native invasive upland vegetation as well. The applicant has agreed to the recommended mitigation. This therefore is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. Accordingly, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025003 Bayberry LLC.
This application relates to an existing residentially developed property. There is quite a large residence that was permitted at the site as a condition of that permit. The landowner has established an extensive covenanted wetland preservation area, an expansive naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer. There are accessory improvements at the residence that the applicant is seeking to upgrade and change. The entirety of the work would conform to the minimum required wetland construction setbacks. There is some remaining fencing in excess of 6 feet, which needs to be removed. At the site, there are also some incursions in the buffer, and the applicant is going to come forward with a plan to restore those areas of site disturbance. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, recommending that the public hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025010 Firefly Pond LLC.
This application relates to a property that has frontage on Cold Spring Pond, an extensive tidal wetlands. There is a preliminary advisory report dated August 6, 2025, which details the accessory improvements that are being planned at the site. Notwithstanding the issuance of a conservation board permit many years ago to a prior landowner that dictated establishment of a 75-foot wide covenanted naturally vegetated buffer. The prior landowner had cleared an extensive portion of that buffer and established lawn. There has been a landward advance in the extent of wetlands at the property as founded by the applicant's consultant. The applicant has proposed to file a new covenant preserving those wetlands and establishing a buffer extending 75 feet landward of the wetland boundary that would be fully restored to seaside suitable native vegetation. However, a portion of the pool patio, which the applicant is looking to extend, would come at its closest point less than 100 feet landward of wetlands. So I have recommended a partial expansion of the buffer beyond 75 feet and that area be restored, which the applicant has agreed to. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that the public hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved, the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A025015, Andrew Perel.
This application relates to a property at Seatuck Lane in the Hamlet and Remsen Borough of Speonk. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated August 4, 2025. There is a small cottage at the property that today is uninhabitable. The former owner has started renovating the house and then apparently decided to sell the property. The new owner wants to demolish the existing home and elevated deck and build the new home, elevated deck and small pool, and essentially the same footprint. Would install an IAOWTS. This is a waterfront site that had been bulkheaded many, many years ago. The low wall bulkhead had almost fully deteriorated, resulting in nearly full recovery of healthy tidal wetlands extending as far as 20 to 25 feet into the property. Notwithstanding the presence of those wetlands, the applicant, without authorization, began to clear and backfill those portions of the property, was cited and was required to file an administrative wetland permit application with me in order to restore the site. Rather than file that application, the landowner submitted a permit application to the Board of Trustees to seek authorization to re-bulkhead the property, received such permit, and was also allowed to heighten the bulkheads and entirely complete the job of clearing and backfilling the extensive recovering tidal wetlands on the property. While ideally my wish would be to see those bulkheads removed and have the natural shoreline and wetlands fully restored, acknowledging that it is within the trustee's authority to permit a bulkhead. Rather than ask that the bulkhead be removed, I'm asking that the entirety of the land between the bulkhead and the new residence be covenanted as a naturally vegetated buffer, be fully restored Trustees had required a stone buffer along a significant portion of the shoreline. I'm asking that that stone be removed and that that area be restored to native vegetative cover as well. And I'm also asking for changes in the trustee required plantings. I have not heard back from the applicant, so it does appear that the applicant is amenable to the recommended mitigation. As such, we have sufficient information to make a determination on this application, and the public hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Okay.
Resolve that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325, of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025-018, 24 Bitter Street LLC.
As indicated by preliminary advisory report on record dated August 6, 2024, 25. This application relates to a vacant piece of property in Noyak, whereby the applicant is seeking a wetland permit in order to build a single-family home and a tennis court. The project plans are conforming with regards to the required minimum construction setbacks, with the exception of the tennis court, which would be located as close as 100 feet landward of wetlands rather than 125 feet. However, those impacts are being offset by establishing a covenanted restored naturally vegetated buffer that would extend at its widest about 120 feet landward of wetlands. That should be sufficient to compensate for construction at less than required 125 feet. The project plans show the expansive buffer and only need some minor revisions, calling for removal of some old existing wire fence lines within bounds of that buffer. The applicant has agreed to the recommended mitigative measures. As such, we have sufficient information to make a determination, and the public hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolve that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-G of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution to issue modification, CB 23004. Stephen Harwin and Phyllis Harwin.
The applicant is seeking a modified wetland permit for residentially developed property at 7 Bay Meadow Lane in the hamlet of West Hampton. The property fronts a canal that also contains very extensive interior wetlands, as can be easily seen on the aerial photograph. The original permit was granted in order to legalize changes that were made to accessory improvements, also to require that an existing drive entry, which cut within a portion of a covenanted buffer, be relocated. As an alternative, the applicant has since come back with a plan that would allow the drive entry to remain in place, but would rectify the loss of covenanted buffer by 2-to-1 increase in buffer within the northerly portion of the property, thereby offsetting the impacts of the drive entry. So,
Thank you.
this is, there is a resolution before you to approve the modified permit. The original permit, as well as the modification which is being entertained, requires the applicant to come forward with an extensive native revegetation plan. And prior to issuing the modified permit and prior to closing out the permit. So this is a resolution to approve the needed modified wetland permit.
Motion to issue the modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Stephen Harwood and Phyllis Harwood for the proposed project on terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? CB 23042, Barbara Zand.
So this is a property at Burnett's Cove Road in Watermill that has frontage on Mecox Bay. The board in 2023 had granted a permit to allow home renovations and various deck improvements contingent upon establishing a covenanted buffer. The applicant had come back to seek a modified permit in order to legalize the partial demolition and reconstruction of the residence as well as reconstruction of the attached garage. They had also desired to reconfigure the required covenanted buffer and to provide for a new buffer at a 2-to-1 ratio. That was conditionally approved. However, prior to the applicant coming forward with the requisite revised survey in order to allow for granting of the modified permit, there were additional changes that were made at the property, namely the installation of deck-top barbecue, installation of rooftop AC units and a generator, and there was some additional demolition and reconstruction that occurred at my request prior to bringing this application before the board. I asked that the applicant provide a satisfactory revised survey as well as a new wetlands and buffer restoration plan, which also calls for a native vegetation of other areas landward of the buffer. The requested survey and restoration plan was submitted and deemed acceptable, thereby allowing them to come forward with a second application in order to modify the existing, existing permit.
Motion issued.
So I should offer that in the interest of, because I had spent a lot of time working with the applicant towards a excellent undertaking, excellent restoration of the property. I did allow the applicant this week to commence some of that restoration and native revegetation, notwithstanding that the board yet needed to act on this modified permit.
Motion to issue the modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Barbara Zand for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024070. Joseph Cerami and Jane Keogh.
This is property at 89 Inlet Road West in the hamlet of Shinnecock Hills. The board had adopted a resolution of conditional approval to allow for various improvements, including residential additions supported by helical piles, as well as expansion the existing deck and installation of a swimming pool. The conditional approval was contingent upon establishing wetland preservation area and maximized naturally vegetated buffer, replacing all lawns, seaward of the residence, and extending right up to the new extended deck and pool. Prior to the applicant coming forward with the requisite draft covenant, they had met with me at the property to discuss some minor modifications to the deck and pool footprint, which are consistent with the setbacks that were previously required by the board. So the applicant is seeking approval of minor project threat changes through a modified conditional approval. These changes will not result in any new or significant adverse impacts to wetlands.
Motion to issue the modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Joseph Cerami for the published project of the terms and conditions if both therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.